Let's go over today's beta patch notes, version 0.104.0. On Ascensions, when it comes to general balance, the base difficulty is quite hard right now. We're continuously adjusting this baseline difficulty to make it more accessible for a wide range of players while also continuing to deliver a challenging game at the highest Ascensions. I think that's great. I think for new people that are not playing on super high ascension levels or are just playing the game for the first time, they're struggling. I hear it a lot on my streams. I hear it a lot through the comments on YouTube. People are getting discouraged and it's a really hard game, which I think is good on the higher ascension levels. I like the direction that they took this beta patch in. We're going to go over some of that stuff in a little bit. But I do think it's important to remember that not everybody is just like a super experienced vet of the game. You know, it's sometimes when we're like very experienced at this game, we tend to forget that. Similarly to the first game, completing runs of Slay the Spire 2 at the highest difficulty should feel like a monumental achievement for a fraction of players devoted to understanding the ins and outs of the game's mechanics. Upon beating your first run, we added a message to communicate this intention for the Ascension system. So when you first pull up the game, they're going to show you a little message. If you're already on the Ascension levels, that's going to explain that it gets harder and whatever. I think this is a great change. I honestly do. I don't think many people will argue with this. It makes it a little easier to get up to the sort of mid-range, higher ascension levels. And once you do, the game is going to become really hard. And that's the whole point in the game, you know, that it's very difficult on Ascension 10, which is why we play. That's why we try to improve all the time, or at least that's why I try to improve all the time. They talk about Doormaker here. We are currently monitoring the Doormaker and looking at a combination of in-game feedback, social media posts, and metrics. We want to give players time to adjust a bit, otherwise we'll be balancing around knee-jerk reactions. Currently, from looking at millions of runs, Doormaker's overall difficulty win rate is in a good place. Slightly weaker than the other Act 3 bosses, both in kill rate and damage dealt. However, we do want to ensure that its mechanics aren't too abrasive against certain playstyles. So here's the thing about Doormaker. Everybody's been relentlessly complaining about how Doormaker works and operates now. And I personally have found that Doormaker is sort of easier to beat than the other Act 3 bosses in a sense. Because the queen is really hard when she locks up like your best cards. I guess you could say the same thing about Doormaker if he eats your best cards, but you just don't play your best cards against Doormaker on the turn that he exhausts, and you're gonna be okay. Meanwhile, like the queen, she's difficult to get through. I don't know. The hardest boss to me is Test Subject. Test Subject is truly a pain in the ass. Test Subject can end your run really, really quickly if you're not good enough. Like your deck is not well built against him. And Doormaker, I struggled with the first couple of times that I faced him with all the new features. But once that happened, once I got used to what he does, you know, the exhausting, the not letting you draw, and then the energy, there's ways to play around that. You know, it's not too bad. There's definitely ways that you can get through the Doormaker. So I think it's very important to like keep in mind that they're monitoring everything. They're monitoring the stats and everything, and that Doormaker may be a little bit frustrating. I think that's the biggest problem that everybody has with it, is that Doormaker's mechanics can be very irritating and discouraging. But I think that's what's cool about Slay the Spire, is that once you figure out how to work against an enemy, once you figure out how to like sort of maneuver around what they're doing, it turns into a really fun experience. Like, it makes everything different and unique. So I don't know. I don't personally mind what Doormaker's doing right now. I don't think he's overly difficult. I do think he's possibly a feels bad kind of guy. But all in all, I'm curious what your thoughts are on Doormaker. You know, let me know in the comments section how you really feel about it. I think a lot of people would be very surprised to learn that once they figure out how the mechanics work and once they figure out how to play around them, that Doormaker is not necessarily as difficult as they thought. But I am genuinely interested in your thoughts on that. So let me know in the comment section below. And then they added a few new arts to the game. They added a few new art to the game. You know what I mean. They added some new card art. They added Vaku. Look at Vaku. I ran into him earlier on stream. He got quite the glow up, you know, as somebody that was watching said. It's true. Vaku looks totally different now. Some of the card art is really cool. They're really starting to get rid of sort of the beta art of certain cards and put in new cool art, which I really like. They added 3 more badges, Damage Leader and Debuffer, which are 2 badges for multiplayer. Whoever dealt the most damage to enemies in multiplayer is now going to get a badge, and whoever debuffed the most is going to get a badge. So kind of a cool thing that you can throw in your friends' faces when you play co-op with them. And then they also added combo, played 20 cards in a single turn. That is a dope badge. That is, I'm looking forward to the other badges that they're going to add into the game because I think they're very, very cool. I like being able to look at your run history and have like a simple badge there that's going to just sort of allow you to get a quick summary of the run. That's just very, very fun to me. I don't know. I enjoy it. I'm a nerd, so it is what it is. Now let's talk about some of the reworked cards, okay? We got Conflagration from the Ironclad. Conflagration used to deal 8 or 9 damage to all enemies and then dealt an additional 2 or 3 additional damage for each attack that you played this turn. Now what it does is it deals 2 damage to all enemies 4 times or 5 times if it's upgraded. I love this change to Conflagration. What they're doing with this change is trying to make strength more like more takeable in Ironclad, because things like Inflame exist, but there's not a lot of really good attacks, like sort of burst attacks that Ironclad has, at least not as much as that existed in Slay the Spire 1. So I really like this change. This is going to make strength a lot more relevant when you're trying to build Ironclad. I think that's the type of thing they need to do with Ironclad. Ironclad is one of the weaker characters, I think, or at least like sort of that's the consensus around the community, is that Ironclad is not really as good as he was in Slay the Spire 1. He's not necessarily great in the game. I think that this is a great step in the right direction. They also reworked Drum of Battle. Drum of Battle was a power that cost 0 that would draw you 2 cards or 3 on the upgrade. And at the start of your turn, it would exhaust the top card of your draw pile. That kind of sucked. Like, that card was really, really, really not good. Now they've turned it into a skill that costs 1 and draws 2 cards. But when you exhaust this card, you're going to gain 2 or 3 energy, depending on if you upgrade it. Drum of Battle sounds absolutely awesome now. I did not get a chance to try it on my runs tonight, so I'm going to have to try and like find that on Ironclad, because I think that that's going to be a really good card. Draw is really, really good in the game, but it's not really, really good if you're exhausting the top card of your draw pile every single turn, nonstop. I specifically lost multiple runs on Ironclad because I used Drum of Battle at the wrong time. It exhausted my most important card during a boss fight, and that was that. It was over for me. Drum of Battle just like really as a power was not good, and getting a skill card that's going to draw you cards no matter what. You don't have to do anything else, but it can also be exhausted and turn into like some sort of energy generation. Very cool new feature of Drum of Battle. I like the synergies that you could do with exhaust engines. Again, the general consensus around Ironclad in the community is that they feel like the exhaust engines on Ironclad are not necessarily that strong, and certainly not as strong as it was in Slay the Spire 1. So this is a cool step in the right direction of getting exhaust and strength sort of at a better place. So I really like that a lot. And the last reworked card is also a really good one. It's Parry. We've seen them change Parry several times over the past several weeks. And this time it seems like this is kind of where they want to stick with it. It was a power card that whenever you play Sovereign Blade, you gain 10 or 14 block. Now it's still a power card, but what it does instead is Sovereign Blade gains 10 or 14 block. You're probably thinking to yourself, what the hell's the difference? And at first, that's what I was thinking, at least. It means that on the card itself, it's going to block the same amount. So it basically does the same exact thing, except now it can be affected by dexterity and frail. So if you have a bunch of dexterity in your deck, playing Sovereign Blade might block for like 18 instead of 10, in which case that's really cool. Or if you're frail, it's going to block for way less, which also really interesting. They reworked the Axebots combat to have just a single more challenging Axebot. The old Axebots were kind of whack. There was the two of them that kept resurrecting basically. I just faced the new one earlier on stream and it was pretty good. I wouldn't say it was like incredible, but it has a lot more HP. I think it had like 81, 82 HP to start, and it resurrected 2 or 3 times, whatever it was, just like the former version of it. And it's just a stronger enemy. I think that's gonna bring sort of challenge to Act 3, because the Act 3 enemies, they're not super great except for like kind of the elites. Some more balanced stuff. Terminal run modifier can no longer bring a player below 1 HP. I don't know what that means. I've never played a custom run, so I'm assuming that has to do with custom runs. So I apologize if that's good news. Then let me know in the comments. On Silent, they changed Nightmare. If you play it and select a card with an affliction on it, that affliction is now removed from the copies added to your hand the following turn. I don't know if I really like that they're removing that, but I guess it's okay. I suppose that's like to prevent the enemies from being too good. I'm not really sure, because copying a card with an affliction feels like, well, you did this, so like maybe suffer the consequences, but it's an okay change, I'm sure. They buffed Untouchable so that it gains more block when it's upgraded from +2 to +3. That's a good one. They changed Tyranny and the way that it works with Bombardment. So Bombardment now will be played after Tyranny. So when you have Tyranny, you can exhaust Bombardment now right away, and it will play it automatically, and it will immediately play it after. So it's just sort of a buff to the Tyranny Bombardment interaction. And then they also nerfed Reflect, which I think very valid. Reflect is probably the best block card in the game, honestly. So it decreasing a little bit in block, I think, is very, very fair. Then we got some ancient reward buffs, and these are very, very cool. Booming Conch was upgraded so that now you gain 1 energy at the start of elite combats to go along with your additional card draw. So I think that's a great change. I think Booming Conch sucked when it was just draw 2 additional cards at the start of elite combats. Like, that's fine. It's not a negative, but it also didn't feel like something you should be picking at all from Niao. There's so many good Niao's rewards that why really bother with that? But now with an extra energy at the start of elite combats, it feels impactful. I tried it out on stream and I thought it actually made a difference. I personally liked it. I don't know if it puts it in the upper echelon of Niao's rewards or anything, but if there's no other rewards that you want to take, or, you know, you have a big elite path, it could be a very solid choice to take now that it gains an extra energy at the start of the turn. They also buffed Niao's Fury, which is really exciting. Niao's Fury was excellent. I played it on stream. I really enjoyed it. Instead of selecting randomly, it now allows you to choose which 2 cards you could put in your hand from your discard pile. So this is essentially Grave Blast, but actually good, because Grave Blast really wasn't that good. I know there's a lot of Grave Blast like truthers out there, but I never personally thought it was that great. But Niao's Fury is a very, very strong version of that you can use on any character. I played it in a run. It did really, really well. I had it on a Regent run where I was bringing back Sovereign Blade into my hand constantly, bring it back from the discard pile. And I also had it on a Perfected Strike run where I kept bringing the Perfected Strike back into my hand, and that was really carrying. Very, very cool buff. I'm not gonna, again, I don't know if it's in the upper echelon of rewards from Niao, but it is very solid and it's a good choice now, and it doesn't really hurt you the way that like the old Niao's Fury, it was like, why are you're just taking a 10 damage card that's putting random cards back from your discard pile. What the hell's the point? You know, now it's targeted. Now it has an actual good reason for you to maybe take it. And then Teskatara's Nutritious Soup also got a buff. This one I did not run into on my runs on stream. In addition to making your strikes cost 0 and giving them eternal, it now makes all strikes deal 3 additional damage. So, Teskatara's Soup, pretty valid now, especially if you haven't removed any strikes. Pretty cool, because now all of a sudden it's basically adding a strike dummy to the relic itself. So if you happen to get strike dummy at the beginning of your run somewhere from like an elite or something, you get to Act 2, you could take the Nutritious Soup. Now all of a sudden your strikes are dealing like 12 damage each, which is really cool. Plus they cost 0 and you can give them eternal. I think this is gonna be a pretty good buff. Again, I never tried it out. I never got a chance to check it out, so we'll have to see about that. But I personally feel like this looks good. And Teskatara's relics are a little weak, you know, outside of like Yummy Cookie and what's the one that gives you 4 energy at the beginning of the turn? It's not a soup, it's something. I don't know, whatever the hell it is. Those are pretty much the best of Teskatara's relics. And now Nutritious Soup is probably up there. You know, it's probably like 3 or 4 or maybe 5. I don't know. Maybe it already was up there because Teskatara kind of sucks. But either way, I do think this is a really cool change. Some interesting enemy changes. So we talked about it earlier. They're trying to make it a little easier at lower ascensions and a little harder at higher ascensions. Well, they changed Ruby. Well, Ruby Raider Assassin got a damage decrease across the board, regardless of ascension level, which probably pretty fair. but they changed Scrolls of Biting to be easier on lower ascensions, harder on higher ascensions. Same with Owl Magistrate and Slime Berserker. I think out of all those, I only ran into the Scrolls of Biting, and they were definitely harder, and they did definitely take some HP away from me, which kind of tough, but at the same time, honestly, losing max HP, I personally think Scrolls of Biting is like a cool enemy. I do think they're a pain in the ass. I do think that I always want to kill them. Obviously, I don't want to lose my max HP, but I think it's a cool idea. And I think that making them a little harder on higher ascensions is pretty fair. And then Phantom got nerfed at lower ascensions, but not nerfed at the higher ascensions. Same with Waterfall Giant. What they say is we are slowly starting the process of making lower ascensions a little easier and higher ascensions slightly harder. We want to do this gradually instead of all at once. I think a very solid change. I think a very smart change. But here's a change that everyone's going to love. They changed the Slippery Bridge event. It will no longer offer to remove the same card multiple times unless it is already offered to remove all other cards in your deck at least once. So when you go and you take the HP damage rather, it will not continue to offer you the same card over and over and over again. It's going to offer you something unique every single time. I was able to see that kind of work in action during one of my runs where it actually offered to take away a curse from me after I got damaged a few times. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. I know that you could have gotten curses removed in general from Slippery Bridge, but it was harder to get because they could repeat the same card over and over again. So I like that. And then multiplayer. They nerfed multiplayer scaling for enemy artifact, slippery, and skittish powers, which I think pretty necessary. Multiplayer with all the artifacts and the slipperies and stuff like that. That was hard, you know. That was really hard because they basically would have like 15, 20 artifacts and it would be very, very hard to get through. I think that's a very fair change. And then Stratagem is back in the colorless card pool because it was originally had some sort of bug in it. So they took it out of those pools. And then they buffed Tag Team. Replay effect now triggers on deal damage to all enemies attacks too. So they made Tag Team work with AoE attacks, which is great. And then of course they have a bunch of art changes. Feral, Not Yet, Spite, Fight Through, Hailstorm, Synchronize, Iteration, Voltaic, Apparition, and Abrasive. So pretty cool. They added some Skulking Colony animations and they made Vaku have different background art and visual effects. Vaku looked totally different. Skulking Colony looked Skulking Colony looked kind of like it was trying to seduce you. I know if you have not played it yet and you have not seen Skulking Colony, you're going to think to yourself, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But when you see it, you'll know it. And you let me know. When you see that, you let me know in the comments section. Do you think Skulking Colony is trying to seduce you? Because I'm telling you right now, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Those were the changes for the patch. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and check out some of my other videos. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.